Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the FIDE World Championship match between Nepomniachtchi and Liren. So we're now in the round 5 of this epic match, and so far I think we have seen great chess. In the first 4 rounds we have already seen 2 decisive games, 1 winning game by Ding and also 1 winning game by Jan. So the result after 4 rounds was 2 points for both of these top grandmasters. So in the round 5, again, really wild things happened. So in my opinion, it was simply the best chess game so far from this World Chess Championship match. This game, I think, shows also a great decision of FIDE to make this first 40 moves in their games without increment. I think increment is making chess more boring. Increment, I think, messed up a little bit chess because time pressure was always a part of a chess game. Time pressure was always a beautiful part of a chess game. I think for a neutral lover to see maybe one player under time pressure is really a beautiful thing, because time pressure creates, of course, inaccuracies, mistakes, blunders. When there are mistakes, inaccuracies, and blunders, then there are maybe even some cool tactics. There are maybe even some wild ideas that one player can produce. So I think the decision to make the first 40 moves without increment by FIDE is a great decision, because also in this game you see that many players are not reacting correctly under time pressure, which gives, of course, one player a huge opportunity in the game. So it creates, of course, more beautiful game, more viewable games for the neutral chess lover. So let's see now what happened in the round 5. Incredible game it was. Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces opened with the move e4. We have e5 by Ding, knight to f3, and here after move knight to c6, again Nepo goes into the Lopez. So in the previous game that they played, when Nepo played with the white pieces, Nepo decided to go into this delayed exchange variation, but now we'll see the more classical systems here. After move a6, again Ding plays the Murphy defense. We have bishop to a4, knight to f6, and after kingside Carlsen, bishop to e7. Nepo played in the last game this delayed exchange variation with the move bishop to c6. Now Nepo played d3, the more solid way. In the game we have now b5, and after move bishop to b3 we have now reached the so-called Martinez variation of the closed Ruy Lopez of the beautiful Spanish game. So after move bishop to b3 we are reaching now the position that has been played millions and millions of times in chess history. Many theoretical ideas are possible here, but the main goal, especially for white, I think, is first of all to occupy this squares d5 f5, making progress with c3 d4 is of course also a natural idea, but black of course has some opportunities to rook to b8, maybe also d6, knight to a5, maybe c5 and c4 are opportunities here to maybe expand on the queen side. So in the game d6 was played by Ding Liren, also a preparation to play something like bishop to g4, not allowing of course c3 d4, because then the bishop could pin the knight here on g4. So in the game we have c3, the preparation here by Nepo to break and enter with the move d4, kingside castling, and now comes this common prophylactic idea by white, h3, not allowing to get pinned and making maybe further progress with the move d4. Now comes bishop to b7, a natural idea by black. If of course you play d4 too early, then of course your pawn on e4 could be vulnerable to black's attacks, especially by the beautiful knight activity, and when the knight moves maybe here to a5, the pawn on e4 could be really a huge strategic problem. So in the game a4, and this is the way to go. Many times when you see the small pawn chain here, a6, b5, then you, of course, you want to attack this pawn chain, you want to undermine the pawn chain, you want to create maybe weaknesses. A weakness can be, of course, a weak square or weak pawn. Now with the move a4, of course, if you take b takes a4, this wouldn't be good. Then, of course, you're left with an isolated a pawn here, which could be, of course, an object of white's attack. So after move a4, knight to a5 by Ding, attacking this very powerful bishop. We have to say that bishop on b3 is so far a good piece, targeting the f7 square. That's why here Nepo retreats to a2. And if you play now, again, b takes a4, then of course the queen is coming into the game, your knight is in danger. So far, nothing spectacular. Black should find different ideas. So that's why here Ding goes with a natural idea, c5. And this move is creating, of course, an expansion on the queen side, but creates also a strategic disadvantage when it comes to pawn structure. It creates this pawn chain on dark squares. It creates this complex on dark squares by the pawns. Whenever that happens, notice that one of these bishops is simply a bad piece. So now the bishop on e7 becomes simply a paralyzed piece. It's becoming a piece that's blocked out by its own pawn structure. And Nepo will try to do something about this concept, because look at this, whenever you feel that your opponent is putting too many of his pawns on the same color, then of course you have opportunities to go positionally into the game, and that's exactly what Nepo is doing. He's trying now to move bishop to g5. He's trying to pick up the knight on f6 and going maybe into a slightly favorable middle game where the knight maybe on f3 could be slightly better than the bishop that's, as I said, paralyzed by its own pawn structure. And that's exactly what happened. h6 was played by Ding, and here Nepo immediately picks up now the bishop on f6. For instance, if you try knight to d7 to maybe get rid of your bad piece, because as I said, the bishop is not optimal here on the square e7. Then of course after bishop to e7, queen to e7, 8 takes b5, 8 takes b5, knight to a3 is also something that I think that bothers black a little bit at the continuation of the game. Pawn on b5 is weak. You have to expose yourself with the move b4, c takes b4. We have here c takes b4, knight to c4. The pawn on b4 could be again a vulnerable pawn in the continuation of the game. So as I said, maybe this was playable, but in the game here Liren decided to play the move h6, and here Nepo welcomes this idea, plays now a certain bad bishop strategy. We have to say it's a deeper bad bishop strategy, because notice after move bishop to f6, the bishop is paralyzed by its own pawn structure, and now there is a clear target that white wants to occupy. It's now the weak d5 square. So we're trying now from white's perspective, of course, to trade off every piece that can protect the d5 square, which in this particular position is of course the bishop on b7, and also here the knight on a5. So what we're trying to do maybe is trade off these two pieces here, these two knights maybe off the board, and maybe these two bishops off the board, but continue the game with maybe a slightly better knight. Then the bishop maybe reroute the knight somehow maybe to this beautiful square d5. It's a long run, of course it's not possible immediately, but that's your plan, going into a slightly sort of bad bishop strategy. The bishop on f6 is of course not an optimal piece here. So in the game, 8 takes b5, 8 takes b5, knight to d2, knight to c6, and now comes this beautiful idea, bishop to d5. Mission accomplished. We are occupying now the weak square in d5, but Ding will show how to defend this position. Ding is of course a great player. He knows how to play these types of positions. After move bishop to d5, first of all he traded off here the rooks. After queen to a1, we have now queen to d7, and after rook to e1, now comes first of all rook to a8, kicking away the queen, and after queen to d1, now again a beautiful move here also by Ding, because Ding knows that his bishop on f6 is not a good piece. It doesn't have good squares to be activated. Now with the maneuver bishop to d8, bishop to b6 can happen, bishop to a5. So now finally the bishop will find its way into the game. Really solid defense here by Liren. He really shows here a great positional understanding. So in the game, knight to f1, Nepo continues with the plan, as we have talked about these ideas in the beginning of the video. Knight to d5, knight to f5 are the common ideas, are the main progressive ideas to occupy these weak squares. In the game, knight to e7, attacking now the bishop on d5, and again Nepo welcomes this idea, trades off really this powerful bishop here on b7 against the bishop on d5, and goes now into two knights versus bishop endgame. Again, what Nepo is trying to do is maybe trade off the knight on f1, for instance, against the knight on e7, and going again into a slightly better continuation with the knight versus bishop endgame, in which of course the white's knight should be slightly better because of this dark square pawn chain, which is of course blocking out the activity of the dark square bishop. So in the game, knight to e3, trying to occupy this beautiful squares, the d5 and f5 square, bishop to b6. Here, beautiful move again by Ding. Ding found a way how to activate this bishop, and now the realistic goal, the main goal of blacks is of course to push the pawn on c4 and finally activate here the bishop. Now the bishop is targeting the knight on e3 and also the pawn on f2. So in the game, h4, and this move I really liked by Nepo. Nepo is saying, I will try to get my knight on f5. In order to make that happen, I have to control the g6 square. Nepo is trying to play h5, not allowing maybe black to play the move g6. If g6 happens, then of course you don't have access to the f5 square. Now with the move h5, Nepo prepares the hop on f5. Very nice positional move here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. So in the game, queen to c6, again a beautiful move here by Ding. c4, liberating the long diagonal for the dark square bishop. h5, Nepo continues with the plan. We have now c4. Here Ding is also continued with his main plan here on the queen side. So now d4, and this was very cool tactical approach here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. After e takes d4, the problem is now you cannot take with the c pawn. The point is that after queen to e4, it's not so easy for white to continue here. You can maybe try this one, knight to c4, discovered attack against the queen. Now the queen comes on c6. Maybe you can play knight to b6, but actually you don't have to pick up now the knight immediately. You play rook to a7, connect the rook to the knight on e7, and now the knight doesn't have any more good squares. So from this point on, I think black has equalized the position immediately. So as I said, after move e takes d4, here queen to e4 doesn't make sense, but Nepo didn't rush here. He played knight to d4. Now of course you cannot take here the pawn on e4, knight to f5 is immediately winning the game. We have this discovered attack against the queen, and the knight is lined up on the e file, so it would be a messed up game. So after move knight to d4, now comes maybe one of the first sort of critical moments of the game. Here Ding played a slightly risky queen to c5, and there is a certain rule in chess that says when you have one bishop that's covering one color squares, of course, on the board. For instance, we have a dark square bishop here, then the queen should cover the opposite colors. So from this point on, I think white has, black has to play on light squares with the queen, has to protect the light squares. Maybe a better way to go here is to play simply move queen to b7. This whole plan to play queen to c5, in my opinion, doesn't make sense. You don't have so many great squares here by the queen. I think here queen to b7 would be perfectly fine, where you are still controlling the e4 square here, where you're still attacking this weak pawn on e4, and we have maybe opportunities to make progress with some ideas of b4, maybe even b3, maybe b takes c3 and similar stuff, getting the rook into the game. I think black has to continue here with the pressure simply on the queen side. This was the way to go. But after move queen to c5, the problem is now you're standing in the way of the bishop, and where are you going to go with the queen? The only good square, I think, is to maybe square e5 or g5, but these squares can be always attacked by the knight. So in my opinion, not the optimal here move by Liren. He really didn't create his best chances in the continuation. So in the game, after move queen to c5, Nepo went with this idea. Look at this, already dangerous. Queen to g4. Nepo is trying to have access now to the f5 square, and he's trying now maybe even to deliver checkmates on g7, which really makes sense. But maybe a better way for Nepo was also to play a tricky queen to f3. For instance, if black continues now with the normal queen to g5, trying somehow to attack also here the g file, there is this tricky idea with the move e5, liberating now the long diagonal and hitting the rook on a8. That was at least the suggested move by top bandits, but of course this is human chess. There are different ideas that here Nepo and Liren are producing, but e5 would be really interesting, because after something like d5, you have even the opportunity to break and enter with the move e6. These knights are so powerful, so in my opinion, this was maybe a slightly better continuation. But of course, here queen to g4 also perfectly fine by Jan Nepomniachtchi. So in the game, we have now queen to e5, and look at this. This is of course a beautiful move. It's centralizing the queen. f4 is not, of course, not possible, because then the e4 pawn is hanging. But now Nepo continues with this normal ideas. Knight to f3, queen to e6. Here Liren is trying to simplify the game by trading off the pieces, but now comes the actual idea here by Jan Nepomniachtchi, knight to f5, and this was the way to go. Still the position is about equal, but I kind of like more white's opportunities here, especially because of the e-file attack, especially because of these two dangerous knights. The queen is very active, so you have to now play really accurate moves in order to defend the position. So in the game, knight to f5 was played by by Ding Liren. Maybe also queen to f6 was sort of an opportunity, because after knight to e7, queen to e7, you, I think, have good chances here. I would say this is now equal. You have opportunities maybe later to somehow get with the rook on the second rank. This pawn is competing against this pawn, so maybe you can activate also your bishop further with c5. Maybe you can make further progress with b4, b3. The ideas that we have talked about previously. Maybe this was slightly better, but after move knight to f5 and that Ding Liren played, we have e takes f5. The queen is under fire. Now we have another maybe tiny little inaccuracy here by Ding Liren. He plays now the slightly risky queen to f6. Again, Ding is playing on dark squares. As I said, the queen should attack the light squares. After move queen to f6, the queen is a little bit exposed here, and it's a little bit stuck to the defense now of the king. Maybe a better way was simply to play queen to d7, because f6, that would be, I think, the normal plan by Jan Nepomniachtchi, to play the move f6. It's not possible because of the tensions on light squares. Now, for instance, you try something like queen to e4, activating further pieces. Now with the move d5, I think you would solve all of your positional problems, and this will be, I think, now an equal game. This continuation, I think, should lead you into a draw, because White can, of course, play actively on the 7th rank, but should never forget, of course, about the black's opportunities also on the 2nd rank. When the rook comes here on a2, then the b2 pawn is weak. If you allow maybe here a 2 versus 1 situation on the queen side, this could be also dangerous. So in my opinion, this was the way to go, and I think probably after a couple more moves, the game would end in a draw. But again, Ding plays on dark squares with the queen. He's never challenging really the queen here on g4. Basically, he's allowing the Nepo to stay active with the queen in g4. In the game queen to e4, look at this now, the d5 move is not working. Previously, if you play queen to d7, as I said, d5 was a good opportunity. After move queen to e4, the rook has to step back. That was the issue. Here with this move, Nepo paralyzed also the rook now. The rook was so beautiful on the a file. For instance, if you play rook to a2 here, then of course queen to c6 is going to happen. Look at this, rook to e8, the bishop is hanging. So again, only attacking opportunities here for white. So you see, with this idea, queen to f6, you allowed your opponent queen to e4, never challenged really the queen, and now suddenly the rook is becoming a passive piece. That's the issue here. From this point on, I think Nepo took over because of this tiny little inaccuracy here by Ding Liren. So rook to e2, beautiful move, connecting simply the pieces, keeping them glued together, and also finally connecting the rook to the 2nd rank, because as I said, the only issue, the only problem that I see here in Nepo's game are the problems on the 2nd rank. Now Nepo has created here a 4 versus 3 situation on the king side with the support of the knight, with his active play, with his battery on the e-file. I think Nepo has here realistic chances to make something to happen. So in the game, bishop to c5 with the progressive plan to play the move b4. Nepo continues with his aggressive attack on the king side, g4. Beautiful move here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. Queen to d8. We have now queen to d5, creating an attack against this backward pawn. This backward pawn on d6 is also a huge strategic problem. So you see, nothing spectacular. There are, of course, only 3 pieces by white that are attacking, but this pawn storm that's coming there, I think that bothers some really here Ding Liren in the continuation of the game. So here Nepo has really great chances to win the game. So what to do now from black's perspective? b4 is one of the suggested ideas by top engines here. b4 to simply give up the pawn on c4, and then to go into this kind of a continuation after b takes c3, allowing simply maybe a white to have this extra pawn, but of course then opening up the b file, at least somehow again activating the rook, because as I said, the rook was so beautiful on the a file, had some attacking chances. Now Ding, I think, should have even played this line, sacrificing 1 pawn, but at least you activate further the piece, and then maybe try somehow to activate the queen, somehow get the queen also into the attack, because the king is also vulnerable here. We have to say this king is a little bit naked here. You have exposed yourself, you push the pawns a little bit further. So with the activity on maybe on the 1st rank, maybe Ding had some chances to make a draw. But also queen to d7 is an opportunity, but I think g5 is always a threat. Probably Ding missed his chances with maybe even this move queen to d7, because now you can play something like king to f8. King to f8 in this position solves, I think, every positional problem, because even if you take here g takes h6, g takes h6, the knight can maybe jump here on all over the board, but you have to also pay good attention. As we said, the rook could come into the game, the pawn on f5 is weak. We can even compete here on the e file. Maybe in some lines you can escape with your king towards the queen side. So, but still, white should be much better, but nothing spectacular. So here with the move queen b4 or queen to d7, these were, I think, the main defensive ideas here by for Dingler. But Ding played king to f8 immediately. Maybe this was a little bit too rushed, because here after move king to f1, Nepo solves also his positional problems with the king, because in some lines, of course, the king could be in danger. Now Nepo improves simply the piece, and now comes the really critical moment of this game. Here Ding played rook to c8, and this is a huge mistake in the continuation. First of all, it's not so easy to see why this is a mistake, but Ding had to again go for a drawish line. Maybe Ding also tried to win the game somehow. Maybe he was delusional about his possibilities in the game. Rook to c8 is not so good. You have to, I think, play queen to c8. You have to compete against this centralized queen here on d5. After h takes g5, maybe knight to g5, queen to b7, at least somehow going into drawish idea. Get rid of the queen. The queen is so dangerous here in the center of the board. This was the way to go. With the move queen to b7, you're protecting also the f7 score, so maybe this was the way to go. Of course, white should be slightly better here, but nothing spectacular. In my opinion, this was the only chance now for Ding to make a draw in this particular position. But he played now rook to c8, and this is now the problem. You don't have any more chances to trade off the queens off the board. Nepo uses now this moment, plays now the aggressive rook to e4, and from this point on, Nepo plays like a machine, plays like the stockfish, and really wild stuff. Rook to e4 creates enormous pressure now. Nepo is trying to get the rook on the g file, where it belongs, of course, but in order to make that happen, you have to play first of all the move g5. So if you play, of course, something like f6 to prevent this idea, then the problem is now you get attacked with knight to h4, knight to g6 are opportunities. You could even get checkmated. So there's simply no progressive defensive idea how to prevent this move g5. G5 is coming, and there's simply no good counterplay at all. In the game, rook to b8, Ding doesn't know what to do anymore with his rook here, and here Nepo goes with this idea g5. And again, the only way to survive this attack is again try to somehow maybe trade off the queens with queen to d7, maybe after g takes h6, g takes h6, f6 could be an opportunity, but at least you get the queen somehow into the game. Again, white is much better. King to e2, and nothing spectacular here for black. You can maybe try to trade off the pieces, but it's, in my opinion, not working. The queen is simply too powerful. We have an annoying pawn on f6. There are even some checkmate threats on the back rank, so this is not a good position anymore for black. But this was, again, maybe the way they go, activating the queen on light squares. And the Ding had so many opportunities to play with the queen on light squares. He always missed them. After move g5, now comes a new blunder by Ding here. Basically, the game is almost over here, because after h takes g5, we have now a beautiful move here by Nepo. Nepo plays the stockfish line, rook to g4, attacking now simply the pawn on g5. The problem is now f6 is again not working. This is really beautiful, because if you play f6, then you get a stunning knight to h4. This would be a monstrous idea. For instance, you pick up the knight. Of course, you don't want to allow your opponent to hop here on g6. If that happens, then you get probably again checkmated. So after move g takes h4, look what happens. h6. If you play here g takes h6, then you get rook to g8, queen to e7, and queen to e6 is a beautiful checkmate. This is really stunning. So after move h6, what you do, you can play maybe something like g5, but we have f takes g6 en passant, and we have now two connected passers here on the g and h file, so it's simply not working. So you don't have defensive ideas. So this move, rook to g4, was a beautiful move here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. You cannot defend anymore this position. In the game, rook to a8 was played by Ding, he's getting somehow the rook into the game, but it's simply too slow. In the game, knight to g5, played by Nepo. We have this check, and now king to e2 here by Nepo. I think Nepo had here even a realistic chance to win the game immediately. King to e2 is prolonging the game a little bit, but look at this. King to g2 would be really, really beautiful, because probably Ding would finally go for this idea. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show how dangerous really the position by Nepo is here. After queen to 8, actually we can trade off the queens, and now we can play a beautiful f6 move. After g takes f6, we have now knight to h7. You can maybe protect the pawn, but now we play rook to e4, and now after king to d7, knight to f6 check, you have to step back and look at this now. This passer will cause, I think, here a headache for Ding Liren. This will be, of course, a completely winning endgame here. The bishop is simply too far away from the action. We can even trade off in some lines the rooks and just push the pawn. So the bishop doesn't have access to the defense because the d4 square is taken. So here, Nepo, I think, had the immediate chance to seal the fate of the game. So after move knight to g5, rook to a1, he played maybe the slightly worst, but still, it's a great game here for Nepo, because after move here, the queen to e7 that Ding Liren played, and this was now really also an epic moment of this game, because after move queen to e7, we are now in the move 40, and with this move, Ding Liren had an extra hour on the clock, so he got additional time, but he pushed this move, I think, with 3 or 4 seconds on the clock, so he had to just push the something. He has to push the move here just in order to get some time. So as I said in the beginning, that's what I love about this competition, that you don't have increment, because time pressure is simply a part of the game. Time pressure was always, I think, a beautiful element of the chess game, so it happened also in this game. Of course, it's not working for Ding, but I think a player that can calculate the position much faster should be rewarded for this. I think Nepo is a great tactician. Nepo calculates the position very fast. Nepo had still, I think, something around 1 hour on the clock here in this particular position. So fast play should be, I think, in some lines should be rewarded. So now after move queen to e7, Nepo plays simply knight to e4, has now great chances. f6, h6 are possibilities. Many opportunities you have here. Pawn on g7 was weak. So from this point on, again, the game is simply over here for black. In the game here, queen to e8 was played by Ding. He tried to somehow keep some chances on the e file, but of course it's not working because Nepo has simply too much pressure here on all over boards. After queen e8, Nepo simply went to f3, getting out of the range of the queen. We have queen to a8. Now again, this idea, we want to trade off the queens, we want to simplify the game from black's perspective, but again, Nepo welcomes this idea. The simplification is not working. Queen to a8, rook to a8, and now f6. We have seen this breakthrough motif earlier. It's so simply working whatever you do. For instance, you play g takes f6, then knight to f6 is coming. You have maybe one tempo against the knight, but now after knight to g8, you can again step back. The rook is cutting off the king's ability to get back into the game. For instance, we push upon h6. So you're trying to get the rook behind, but it's simply not working. King to g2 solves the tactical problems. You can maybe play f5, but we just push the pawn further. We promote the queen, and this game should be over. So after move f6, Ding went with g6. He's saying, okay, maybe I have here 3 versus 2. When you have a doubled pawn, okay, now you have basically one pawn that can be maneuvered, but after rook to g6, still it's very dangerous here for black, because the king has now great access to the life course, and we have always also the opportunities with the knight to get into the game. Ding tried the desperate idea, rook to a2, maybe trying to get the pawn on b2, but king to g4, a beautiful stunning move here by Nepo, getting the king active after rook to b2, rook to h6 in this position. Actually, Ding Liren resigned. Really wild stuff, but when you think about it harder, this really makes sense, because whatever you do, for instance, you can try the normal idea, king to e8, then rook to h6. You can maybe go with your king here, but now we simply push the pawn further at f7, and the game should be over. You can maybe try king to f7 here instead of king to e8, but again, it's not working. Knight to g5 is winning the game. You can step back. Now we play f7. You play something like king to e6, e7, but now the rook is going all over the board, so you can play again couple of checks. We'll simply promote to queen again. It's not working. You can play, of course, rook to f2. Here sacrificing the rook for the exchange, but after knight to f2, bishop to f2, again the king comes closer. King to e6 going to happen, so again there's simply no defense against the promotion. If you play bishop to f2 in this position, then again we have a check, then the king gets closer, you don't have any more dangerous checks. You can maybe play something like d5, but now after knight to g5 it would be even a beautiful checkmate with the knight and with the beautiful control of the king, with the rook's activity that's cutting off the escape routes for the king. So after move, as I said, rook to h6. In this position, Ding Liren resigned, which means that Nepo takes the lead again. Nepo has now 3 points, Ding Liren has 2 points. Incredible game it was, I think, by Jan. He was dominating through the whole game. Ding missed his chances to defend the position. I think Ding had never chance here to activate somehow to take over the game, but he had some chances to equalize the game, especially with the queen moves on the light squares, where he could have maybe simplified the game much earlier. He missed his chances, tried to be even active here, but Nepo punished his active ideas and I think played a beautiful chess game. Incredible game he played without inaccuracies, mistakes, blunders. He, I think, played great attacking chess. He understood the positional problems of blacks. He played with this knight versus bishops endgame, where the knight is much better. As I said in the beginning, when you create this weak square complex, if you remember the position e5, d6, c5, then the bishop is always bad. Ding eventually activated the bishop, but the bishop never get opportunities in the game, so Jan played a great positional game and is now deserved the leader of the World Chess Championship match. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this analysis. It was an incredible game in the round 5. Tomorrow, Ding has again the white pieces. Maybe Ding can get back into the game. Nothing is lost so far. We see everyone makes the mistakes, but this will be a beautiful World Championship match for us to follow for sure. So, okay, if you want to see also our previous games that we have analyzed so far, here's the link of our World Chess Championship match. And if you like this content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.